We're about to break into a side of California that few tourists ever see, a world far removed from sunlit beaches and glittering Hollywood dreams. Behind the glossy facade lies an expanding shadow tent cities stretching across sidewalks, the sharp stench of decay in the air and the low, constant hum of desperation. This is the other California where survival is a daily battle, not a choice. In this exposé, we'll uncover why the Golden State, home to billionaires and tech empires, now holds nearly 1/3 of America's homeless population. Prepare to explore the brutal contradictions, the unseen human stories, and the real cost of a dream slipping away. Number 1. California's homelessness crisis in 2025. When people think of California, they often picture golden beaches, tech empires, and endless possibilities. But behind the dazzling lights, a silent emergency is deepening. In 2025, California faces an alarming surge in homelessness, a crisis that is impossible to ignore. Today, more than 511,000 individuals in California are without a home. That's a sharp spike compared to last year. To put it in perspective, while California accounts for only about 12% of the total United States population, it shockingly houses almost 30% of the nation's homeless people. No other state even comes close. California holds the grim title of having the highest homelessness rate across the country, with a staggering number living without any shelter at all. And the situation is even more heartbreaking when you dive deeper into the conditions these individuals face. Roughly 2/3 of California's homeless population are unsheltered, meaning they live under open skies exposed to the elements without the basic security of four walls. Picture rows of worn-out tents crowding city sidewalks, makeshift shelters clinging to freeway underpasses, and broken-down vehicles doubling as desperate homes. In cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Oakland, entire blocks have been overtaken by sprawling encampments, becoming grim symbols of a system stretched beyond its limits. Walking through these areas, one cannot help but notice the pungent smell of damp fabric, the buzzing noise of busy streets mixing with quiet cries for help, and the haunting sight of humanity living on the edge. Perhaps the most devastating impact of this crisis falls on children today. Nearly 200,000 public school students in California experience homelessness. That's about 4.3% of all students in the state. Imagine trying to focus on a math problem when you don't know where you will sleep tonight. For these children, school is often the only stable part of their day. Yet the lack of a permanent home disrupts not only their education, but also their emotional and psychological development. Constant moves, exposure to unsafe environments, and the daily stress of survival leave lasting scars that no textbook can erase. This sharp rise in child homelessness is not just a statistic, it is a flashing red warning sign for California's future. Without immediate sustained intervention, an entire generation could be lost to cycles of poverty, instability, and despair. As we journey deeper into this story, we will uncover the human faces behind these numbers, the systemic failures that fuel this emergency, and the urgent calls for change echoing across the Golden State. Number 2. Demographics of California's homeless population. When we talk about homelessness in California, it is easy to imagine a single uniform image, but the reality is much more complicated and far more heartbreaking. If we really want to understand the crisis, we have to dig deeper into who is affected the most, and the numbers will shock you. Let's start with race. Although Black residents make up just around 5% of California's population, they represent a staggering 25% of the homeless population. That is not just a statistic, that is a flashing sign of deep-rooted inequality. Latino communities are not far behind. Nearly 44% of people experiencing homelessness identify as Latino, a sharp overrepresentation compared to their general population share of about 39%. Meanwhile, white and Asian populations, despite being larger groups overall, account for a smaller proportion of the homeless, revealing racial disparities that can no longer be ignored. In fact, The 2025 Homeless Assessment Report by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development highlights that racial minorities continue to face systemic barriers to housing stability, from generational wealth gaps to discriminatory rental practices. But race is only part of the story. When we look at family structures and age groups among the homeless, the picture becomes even clearer and even more painful. About 80% of homeless individuals are single adults, navigating the brutal reality of life on the streets without the safety net of a family. Among them, a heartbreaking 14% are families with children trying to hold on to a sense of normalcy in impossible circumstances. These families often move from shelter to shelter, or worse, sleep inside cars parked along city streets. And then there are the forgotten ones, the unaccompanied youth, teenagers sometimes as young as 13, living without parents, guardians, or any stable support system, making every night a dangerous game of survival. Adding another layer to this crisis is the aging homeless population. More than 40% of homeless households now consist of adults over the age of 50. Many of them once held jobs, paid taxes, and contributed to their communities. But with skyrocketing healthcare costs and the erosion of affordable housing, they found themselves slipping through the cracks. Most lack stable incomes and health insurance, leaving them extremely vulnerable to illness, injury, and exploitation. A study from the University of California, San Francisco in early 2025 revealed that older adults experiencing homelessness are now among the fastest growing segments, facing a mortality rate 3 times higher than that of their housed peers. It is impossible to hear these numbers and not feel a pit in your stomach. This is not just a story of personal failure, it is a reflection of a system that has failed to catch those who needed it most. The faces of California's homeless are diverse. Black, Latino, young, old families struggling to stay together, and elders trying to survive alone. Number 3. Main causes behind the surge in homelessness. If we want to understand why homelessness in California has exploded to historic highs in 2025, we have to look beyond the surface. This crisis didn't happen overnight. It's the result of a perfect storm fueled by nature's fury, skyrocketing housing costs, and a brutal squeeze on working families. First, let's talk about the fires in late 2024 and early 2025. California faced one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in its history. The infernos ripped through Los Angeles County, wiping entire neighborhoods off the map in a matter of hours. According to the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, over 70,000 acres were destroyed, and more than 15,000 families lost their homes. When you lose your home overnight and insurance payouts are delayed or insufficient, where do you go? For many, the answer was heartbreaking. They had nowhere to turn but the street shelters, or worse yet, their cars. This wave of newly displaced residents sharply increased the already soaring number of homeless individuals across the state. But the damage didn't end with the flames. In the aftermath, the housing market spiraled into chaos. With thousands of homes gone, the demand for rental properties exploded, and so did the prices. In some of the hardest-hit areas, average rental rates jumped by as much as 124%. Imagine trying to afford a basic 2-bedroom apartment when the rent doubles within a year. Temporary housing options like hotels and motels, once a last resort for struggling families, also became prohibitively expensive. Even budget motels, which used to charge $80 a night, started demanding over $180, far beyond what many working-class families could afford. For those already living paycheck to paycheck, it was like a trap door opening beneath their feet. And if you think it only affected the poorest, think again. The ripple effect slammed hard into the working class, and the lower middle-class families that once clung to the hope of stability now found themselves priced out of the very cities where they had built their lives. Construction workers, grocery clerks, teachers, nurses, people we see every day were forced to move farther and farther away from urban centers in desperate search of affordable housing. But even the surrounding suburbs and smaller towns could not absorb the tidal wave of displaced residents. Housing shortages spread like wildfire, pushing rental prices higher in once affordable areas and creating a domino effect that left more and more families without a roof over their heads. By 2025, the consequences became painfully clear. Reports from the University of Southern California show that in counties like San Bernardino and Riverside, homelessness rates have surged by nearly 40% compared to the previous year. It's like watching a slow-motion collapse of an entire housing ecosystem starting in the city centers and radiating outward until there's no safe harbor left for anyone barely hanging on. In short, it's not just one factor fueling this crisis. It's a brutal combination of environmental disaster, economic shock, and a housing market gone mad. And unless we address each piece of this puzzle head-on, the number of Californians forced into homelessness will only keep rising. Number 4. State efforts and real outcomes. When it comes to tackling homelessness, California has not exactly been sitting on its hands. In fact, the state has thrown more money at this crisis than ever before. For the fiscal year 2024 to 2025 alone, California earmarked over $7 billion toward housing and homelessness programs, the largest commitment in its history. A big chunk of that went into projects like HomeKey, a bold initiative aiming to turn rundown hotels, motels, and vacant properties into permanent housing solutions. On paper, it sounds like the kind of groundbreaking move that could change thousands of lives. And to be fair, there have been some successes. By early 2025, HomeKey had managed to create over 14,000 new housing units, statewide offering a fresh start to some of the most vulnerable citizens. Seeing abandoned motels transformed into brightly painted, livable homes gives a glimmer of hope that real change is possible. But here's the catch. Despite all this massive spending, the number of people experiencing homelessness in California keeps climbing. Recent reports from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development show that between 2024 and 2025, the homeless population in the state jumped by more than 9%. That is not just a bump. It is a loud alarm bell ringing across the Golden State. So what went wrong? Well, it turns out that throwing money at a problem is not enough when the system itself is broken. One of the biggest issues has been a severe lack of coordination among state, county, and city agencies. Instead of a streamlined, united front, what you often find is a patchwork of programs with overlapping goals, competing priorities, and frustrating red tape. In many areas, projects that were supposed to take months dragged on for years because of endless permits, zoning disputes, or community resistance. The old saying, "too many cooks in the kitchen," feels painfully accurate here. Speaking of resistance, another major roadblock comes straight from local communities themselves. Time and time again, proposed shelters or affordable housing developments have been met with a wall of opposition. Residents fear plummeting property values, rising crime rates, or simply having to confront the harsh realities of poverty right in their backyard. This "not in my backyard" or NIMBY mentality has delayed or derailed countless projects across California, leaving thousands still out in the cold. And if that were not enough, there is another ugly truth we have to face. Not all the organizations trusted with public funds have delivered on their promises. Some nonprofits tasked with running shelters or support programs have been plagued by inefficiency, bloated administrative costs, and in some cases outright fraud. A 2025 state audit revealed that roughly 12% of homelessness-related grants either lacked sufficient oversight or were spent on questionable expenses. It is a harsh reminder that good intentions without solid accountability can sometimes lead to wasted opportunities and broken trust. All this adds up to a bitter irony. California, the land of billion-dollar dreams and Silicon Valley riches, has spent tens of billions of dollars trying to solve homelessness. Yet the tents, the desperation, and the human suffering are still growing. It is like trying to patch a sinking ship with duct tape. The road ahead demands more than just money. It demands smarter planning, faster execution, stronger partnerships, and a shift in how communities view homelessness. Because unless California finds a way to fix the engine, no amount of fuel will get the state to where it needs to be. Number 5. Los Angeles, case study, a city under pressure. If you want to understand the scale of California's homelessness crisis, look no further than Los Angeles, a city once known for dreams, now haunted by desperation. In 2025, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles has reached an estimated 195,000. That's not just a number, that's a 35% increase from the year before, and the crisis isn't tucked away in a forgotten corner. It has spilled into every part of the city, from the shadows of Skid Row to the sidewalks of Venice Beach, from downtown high-rises to suburban streets. This is no longer just an issue for the so-called bad neighborhoods. Tents and tarps now line freeway overpasses and school fences. Homelessness has become part of the city's everyday landscape, visible to everyone, but still invisible to many in power. And while this crisis affects people from all walks of life, certain groups are hit harder than others. Nearly 30,000 children in Los Angeles are currently living without a stable home. That's the equivalent of filling up an entire sports stadium with kids who don't know where they'll sleep tonight. These are students who show up to school, tired, anxious, and hungry. Children who carry backpacks filled with worry instead of books. Then, there are the chronically homeless individuals who have been without shelter for over a year, often battling mental illness, addiction, or both. Their numbers are climbing fast. According to a 2025 report by the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, long-term homelessness now accounts for over 38% of the city's homeless population, the highest rate ever recorded. And let's not forget undocumented immigrants. These individuals face a cruel double bind. Many of them work long hours for low wages, yet they cannot access public assistance due to their immigration status. That means no housing vouchers, no legal aid, and often no shelter beds. They live in the margins, uncounted and unprotected, surviving in the shadows of a city built on opportunity. All of this places enormous strain on Los Angeles's already overwhelmed infrastructure. Emergency rooms are flooded with patients seeking basic care they can't get anywhere else. First responders are stretched thin, often acting as de facto social workers. Public transportation systems meant to move people efficiently are now serving as shelter during the night. These systems were never designed for this, and they are breaking under the weight of expectation. And then there's the issue of affordability. In 2025, the average price of a home in Los Angeles is hovering around $1 million. Yes, $1 million. That's more than 10 times what many residents earn in a year. Even rent for a one-bedroom apartment can climb above $3,000 per month. Wages, meanwhile, have barely moved. This mismatch has created a brutal housing trap. People working full-time jobs are still unable to keep a roof over their heads. The result, a city with gleaming towers and tech hubs on one side and tent cities and boarded-up storefronts on the other, a city of wealth and waste, promise and pain living side by side. Los Angeles is more than a case study. It's a warning. It shows us what happens when a housing crisis meets broken policy, rising inequality, and social indifference. And unless the system changes, the number of people left behind will only continue to grow. Number 6. Ending homelessness by 2035. Is it possible? When we imagine the California of 2035, it's tempting to picture a place where homelessness is finally a thing of the past. But getting there will take more than good intentions. It will demand bold strategy, real investment, and a complete shift in how society views the crisis. Right now, California's approach is a mix of tough love and long-term care. On one side, the state is tightening laws that target visible homelessness, like banning tent encampments and prohibiting sleeping in public spaces. These laws have sparked heated debate. Critics argue that they only push the problem out of sight, treating the symptoms without curing the disease. It's like trying to put out a wildfire by sweeping away the smoke. On the other side, California is doubling down on programs that invest in permanent solutions. One of the most promising strategies is called housing. First, unlike traditional methods that require people to overcome addiction or mental health issues before getting a place to live, Housing First flips the script. It provides stable housing immediately, no strings attached, while offering support services like mental health care, addiction treatment, and job placement. A 2025 study by the University of California, Los Angeles found that participants in Housing First programs were over 70% more likely to remain housed after 2 years, and communities that adopted this model saw major reductions in emergency room visits and police interventions. Housing First is not just more humane, it is also more cost-effective. Still, even the best programs face big hurdles to truly wipe out homelessness by 2035. Several urgent changes must happen. First, California must slash the bureaucratic red tape that slows down affordable housing projects. As it stands, it can take up to 5 years just to break ground on a new development. That timeline has to shrink fast. Second, the state and local governments must improve collaboration. Too often, efforts get bogged down in turf wars between agencies, leaving vulnerable people caught in the middle. Finally, perhaps the hardest challenge of all, reshaping public perception. We need to stop seeing homeless individuals as trash, cluttering up the streets, and start seeing them as neighbors who deserve dignity, opportunity, and care. Changing minds may be just as important as changing policies. And then there's the price tag. Ending homelessness won't come cheap. Experts estimate California will need around $110 billion over the next 12 years. That's roughly between $9 and $10 billion every year until 2035. It's a colossal investment, but consider this: the current costs of emergency services, hospitalizations, incarceration, and lost productivity, tied to homelessness, already amount to billions annually. In the long run, solving homelessness could actually save money, not just lives. So is it possible? Absolutely, but only if California treats homelessness not as a side issue to manage, but as a humanitarian crisis to end. Only if every dollar spent is matched by political will, community compassion, and relentless focus. Because at the end of the day, a society is judged not by the wealth of its richest, but by how it cares for its most vulnerable. And in 2035, California will either be a shining example or a cautionary tale. The homelessness crisis in California is not a sudden disaster. It is the slow result of deep-rooted inequality, a severe shortage of affordable housing, devastating natural disasters, and years of ineffective management. Solving it will not happen with patchwork solutions or quick fixes. It will take bold action, comprehensive policies, and above all, a true partnership between government, communities, organizations, and individuals. At the heart of every strategy must be one simple, powerful truth: people deserve dignity. Ending homelessness is not just about building houses. It is about rebuilding lives with real support and unwavering respect. If this story moved you, I invite you to like the video, subscribe to NVL Travel documentary, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, and together we can be part of the change we hope to see. Thank you for watching.